Welcome to another episode of The Bug Bite, hosted by yours truly, Tech Coach Ralph. Today, we are going to be exploring a bug that affected Windows PCs back in around the 2005 year by a patch for the game EVE Online. Let's dive into that and find out how computers were no longer able to boot up after installing that patch. So, yes, in today's day and age, so many people love to game. But what about when the game prevents you from doing anything else? When you try to go to boot up your computer and it says there's no Boot.ini file, the computer cannot start. What do you do then? Let's find out how this very popular game caused computers to no longer be able to boot. All right, so this is what we're going to do. We're going to first find out what EVE Online actually is. Then we're going to check to see what the bug actually was, and we'll go from there. So let's jump straight into it. All right, so what is EVE Online? EVE Online is a space-based, persistent world, massively multiplayer online role-playing game, MMORPG, developed and published by CCP Games. Players of EVE Online can participate in a number of in-game professions and activities, including mining, piracy, manufacturing, trading, explorations, and combat, both player versus environment and player versus player. The game contains a total of 7,800 star systems that can be visited by players. The game is renowned for its scale and complexity with regards to player interactions. In its single shared game world, players engage in unscripted economic competition, warfare, and political schemes with other players. The Bloodbath of BR5RB, a battle involving thousands of players in a single star system, took 21 hours and was recognized as one of the largest and most expensive battles in gaming history. EVE Online was exhibited at the Museum of Modern Art with a video including the historical events and accomplishments of the player base. All right, so that's a brief history of EVE Online. Let's see a little bit more. EVE Online was released in North America and Europe in May of 2003. It was published from May to December 2003 by Simon and Schuster Interactive, after which CCP purchased the rights and began to self-publish via a digital distribution scheme. On January 22nd, 2008, it was announced that EVE Online would be distributed via Steam. On March 10th, 2009, the game was again made available in boxed form in stores, released by Atari. In February 2013, EVE Online reached over 500,000 subscribers. On November 11, 2006, EVE Online added a limited free-to-play version. All right, so that is a good background on what EVE Online is. And now let's jump into the bug. So this was affecting the Boot.ini issue on Windows computers. So this article is directly from EVE Online, and it talks about what the actual issue was. So let's start reading it. And let's zoom in a little bit. All right. It says, "My name is Dr. Erlunder S. Thorstensson, and I have been directing the EVE Online software group for the better part of this year. From my previous work experiences in the antivirus industry and following CCP for quite some time now, I have come to appreciate the need for full disclosure when things don't go according to plan. Shortly after releasing EVE Online, Trinity at 22:04 GMT on Wednesday, 5th of December, we started receiving reports that the classic to premium graphics content upgrade was causing problems to players by deleting the Boot.ini file on the C drive, which is a Windows system startup file. In some cases, the computer was not able to recover on the next startup and would not start until the file had been fixed. In this dev blog, I want to tell you how this all happened. In weeks leading up to the release of Trinity, one of our concerns was how to deliver this update to our players in a very short amount of time and to players that might not have a good internet connection. Significant effort was therefore put into making the classic to premium graphics content upgrade as small as possible at various stages in the process. Initially, we had planned to use our third-party patching technology to create the graphics content upgrade file. However, we realized late in the development cycle that while it was suitable for creating small update patches for files that already existed on the computer, it did poorly in compressing new files. Since the content upgrade only had to replace two small text files, Boot.ini and manifest.dat, and then copy 1.43 gigabytes of new files, resdx9.stuff, we decided to switch to our third-party installer technology that had superior compression, LZMA, enabling us to shrink down from about 866 megabytes to 584 megabytes. All right, so far, they're trying to deliver this update, and it needs to overwrite some existing files. And it's a really this happened back in 2005, right? So at that time, 1.43 gigabytes was a huge amount of data to move on the internet connections. We did not have the speed of internet that we have now. So it would take some time to move 1.43, and at that time too, the data limits were very capped. So trying to move that much data could cause it would be very slow, and it could require some serious costs from your internet service provider. All right. So they're trying to optimize how they're delivering the file to the users. Okay. So very good intentions. The script to create the graphics content upgrade installer file was added to our source code management system on November 30th at 14:59 GMT. The first graphics content upgrade to use the installer technology was released on Singularity on Sunday, December 2nd, and then a version for the final build, 45017, was released on Tranquility at 22:04 GMT on December 5th when the server was opened. It might appear from the installer log that we made the mistake of explicitly deleting /boot.ini instead of just boot.ini. The former would delete the file from the root of the current drive, whereas the latter would only delete from the current working directory. It is not quite so. The mistake was to assume that the file would be deleted from the current working directory without giving the full path. In fact, this is the code in the installer script that caused the problem. So in the installer script, we have set output path. So the output path is going to be the installation directory, whatever variable that's being set for their wherever they're setting the variable, right? So, and then it says, so the output directory is install directory, and then it says delete the boot.ini file. So whatever in that install directory, find the boot.ini file and delete that, and then delete the manifest.dat file. And then it says for a file, I'm guessing it's to create the file or copy in the file from wherever it's coming from of boot.ini. Do the same thing for manifest.dat, and then whatever files follow that start with res.dxt9 and whatever goes in between there, and then that end with .stuff, copy that over or create it, and the section ends. The assumption was that by setting set output path install directory, then all commands that followed would use that working directory. So like I just said, so the expectation was all the files would go into that directory. The file command used the output path that has been set. The documentation for delete function says the file should be specified with a full path, but in fact, it must be specified with a full path. So it's like the documentation is saying you should do this, but it should have actually said it's required to do this. All right. So it should have been delete and then install directory / boot.ini, delete install directory / manifest.dat. All right. And this is interesting because when you don't set that full path, although in certain situations, like it should work, like it should resolve to an absolute path. When it doesn't, then you can end up having catastrophic. You can end up having catastrophic situations like we have in this bug that we're reviewing, right? Because it should work, but if it didn't, then it ends up deleting a major file, and then users aren't able to get into their computer over an online game. All right. This is otherwise, it is assumed that the file should be deleted from the root. The fix we made to the installer script was not to explicitly delete these two files, but rather implicitly overwrite them. That fix was made in the early morning after the release on December 6th at 6:08 GMT, and a fixed graphic content upgrade was released shortly thereafter. The faulty upgrade had been pulled from Tranquility a few hours after the problem was discovered at around 3:40 GMT. So 3:40 in the morning, they discovered the bug and they started fixing it, or they fixed it by then. There are a few observations that you could rightly make. Why do you have a file with the same name as a Windows system startup file? The answer is really legacy. It has been like that since 2001 when the file was introduced on the server and later migrated over to the client in 2002. So this file has been with us for over 6 years. We are reviewing all file names and changing the name of any file that conflicts with Windows. Okay. Now, why doesn't Windows protect its system startup files? That is a good question. I agree. That is a great question. One that I have asked myself in these last few days and wish I knew the answer. But of course, I'm not going to blame Microsoft for our mistake. Windows does not protect those files, and therefore software developers must take care not to touch them. We should have been more careful. And when I first came across this bug, I was under the assumption that there was some way they were overriding the permissions that Windows set to delete that file, because I automatically assumed as well that Windows would be protecting the Boot.ini file, since it's pretty much one of the most important files on the file system. Because if that Boot.ini file isn't there, or if it's not working correctly, or if it's corrupted, you're gonna get this message on your screen that says it can't, like, there's no Boot.ini file, or it's corrupted and you can't get started, and now your whole day is ruined. You can't work. You can't go and play your online game. You can't go shop on Amazon. So many things that happen just because that one file is corrupted. So I was automatically under the assumption that Microsoft would be protecting that file. It can't be overridden. It can't be deleted. Like, you'd have to get some type of root access to make modifications to it, and just throw a gazillion warnings up. But at the same time, this was great accountability by the person writing the article, because even though Microsoft isn't protecting it, you being whoever is making these updates is responsible for the file being deleted, right? So it's, at the end of the day, it's totally on them for deleting that file. But one would expect that an operating system would better protect its necessary startup files. Now we get into why wasn't this caught in a code review? The installer scripting language is not easy to read. We had been working very hard for many weeks prior to release, evenings and weekends, and this error slipped by us. This is one of the tough things about releasing software. Working against these deadlines, these priorities that we need to meet, and like here's the thing with code reviews, right? When you have a code review, it's hard to see in the code review all the different implications and potential bugs that it may cause, because with the code review, you're not necessarily executing the software, or you're not necessarily executing the the code. You're mostly reviewing it for logic and trying to see, okay, what could this cause, um, and syntax. Make sure there's no obvious type errors in the code itself, and not necessarily in what's going to happen in the implementation. Sometimes you're able to catch it, especially if you're very familiar with the code. But it's not like code reviews do not necessarily catch bugs, which leads us into the next part, right? Why didn't you catch this during testing? Now that is a great question. It's partly the reason above: not enough time to test the graphics content upgrade thoroughly to notice it removed from the file. We also discovered that we didn't have enough variation in our hardware and operating system setup, since Windows will recover if it's on the first partition of the boot drive. It seems that most computers at CCP are set up this way, and this was my personal experience. In the evening of the release. I upgraded my Revelations 2.3 client to Trinity Classic, and from there to Trinity Premium. I logged onto Tranquility, then logged directly out again and rebooted my computer without any visible problems. Needless to say, we have already revised our testing procedures to make sure this doesn't happen again. When this problem was discovered, we called back to work in. When this problem was discovered, developers were called back to work in the middle of the night to investigate and fix it. Since we have been working hard around the clock helping our customers that were affected by this problem, quickly establishing phone support and even making arrangements for external support technicians such as Geek Squad to assist our customers when necessary. In all, we've been contacted by fewer than 215 users, 170 by petition, 45 by phone, who were adversely affected by the Boot.ini issue, and we will remain diligent in our efforts to see that each case is resolved satisfactorily, first through our customer support, and if that fails, through third-party technical assistance such as Geek Squad. For more information on the Boot.ini issue, please visit this webpage, which we don't need to do that because I think we have a pretty good understanding of it. But I want to focus a little bit more on the tech support, on the testing part of it, the QA part of it, right? This is a pretty big bug that slipped through, and this is one of the challenging parts about working in QA, right? You have, in this particular case, right? You have a release deadline that they're trying to make a release deadline. Um, Developers are working up to the last minute, and it gets thrown to QA, and it says, all right, we got to test. Who knows at this time if there was the ability to have automated test, especially for this domain, this industry, right? So now when you're testing and you do the upgrade, in this particular case, if their computers are set up a particular way, you don't actually see this happening. Maybe the where the boot.ini file is being deleted, it doesn't exist in the first place, so it's able to install it based on the hard drive partitions. Who knows? Like, because you can have, especially back in that time frame, sometimes you just have one partition that houses your Windows installation as well as all of your other files. So if someone is set up that way and now this wipes out their boot.ini file, now it's not going to start at all, right? But at the same time, there needs to be different configurations because this is a pretty huge issue, which would cost them a lot of money. Luckily, this was caught early on in the process, and they were able to reduce the overall impact on that this was happening. 215 people who contacted them. It was probably more people, especially like if this release is happening in the middle of the night and they caught it. It definitely reduces the impact, but it was probably more than 215 people affected. But it's still pretty low amount of people for the severity of this problem. So it's great that they caught it, but this is a tough experience, a very costly experience, because now you have to go and contract Geek Squad and other technical support people, and it just makes it very, very hard. Let's keep going. We deeply regret this incident and appreciate the patience and support of our community. We deeply regret this incident and appreciate the patience and support our community has shown through the recovery process. So that was the article from EVE Online. It was pretty much their press release about what happened, how they handled it, and what caused it to happen. Which it's not it is uncommon for this severity, I'd say, but bugs do make it to production. We need to be very diligent in protecting our company, because this type of bug, sometimes you have to raise a red flag and say, no, we cannot release because this is what's going to happen. We need to, especially as Q engineers, we need to stand our ground and protect the company, because although we have that desire to release, sometimes the desire to release can end up costing us significantly. And it is our job as QA engineers to protect our company. All right. So that was an interesting bug caused by a game, right? This game was able to affect the whole entire operating system, and that would this game was able to potentially ruin your operating system. But it's great that it was caught very early after release. Still very costly, but caught very early, and it was resolved. And I commend the person who wrote the article, because they took great accountability on saying, a full, what we call this is a post-mortem, where after something goes wrong, you have a write-up of what caused it, like why did it happen, what caused it, what are the steps to preventing this from happening again. So that was a great part of it, to read that. And thank God that it affected just a very minor amount of users, probably more than 215, because not everybody always reports it. Some people, they just go ahead and they fix it themselves. And at the same time, you might not exactly even know that that's what caused it, until the company reports that they were the one who caused it. But it was pretty impactful, and it could have been a lot worse if they didn't catch it earlier. But at the same time, it shows the importance of being diligent developers and being diligent quality assurance engineers. You can definitely see that quality assurance is definitely needed, because a lot of times some things are not able to be unit tested. Some things do not get caught during code review, and it gets to the last line of defense, and we can't just rubber stamp everything. We have to test thoroughly to make sure that everything is working as expected. So that shows the importance of the fully going through the software development lifecycle with development and with testing to make sure that things are on the up and up, things are working as expected. So hope you enjoyed this review of this software related bug that was affecting Windows being able to properly boot up after this update. So if you enjoyed this content, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell for when we go live, hit the like button, share the content, leave a comment. If you have any ideas or topics that you'd like me to review, don't hesitate to send that to me, as I am here to provide amazing content for you. So until next time, friends, this is Tech Coach Ralph signing off.
If you enjoyed the fascinating information shared in this video and you want more, be sure to hit the subscribe button to Tech Coach Ralph to be notified for new videos.